Hey, what's going on, DDO players? Axel here. So yesterday I made a video talking about the new DDO producers letter. I'll put a link below in the description for that if you haven't seen it. But there have also been posts on the Lamania preview server forums that have given additional details to some of the things talked about in that letter. So in this video, I'm going to go through this post on archetypes. So give my thoughts, opinions, we'll just go through it together. Also, by the way, quick correction yesterday. I mentioned that a few people pointed out, so thank you to Foji Video and Caleb. Minor mistake when it comes to the new adventure pack. There are apparently only 7 planar eyes in the storyline that we've yet to come across, not 9. So minor correction from yesterday. Anyways, let's get on to the archetypes. And by the way, it is thunderstorming really loud outside. So if you hear that, my bad. Anyways, all right, so let's go over this developer post here. So howdy y'all. Do you know in the producer's letter this year we announced an exciting new type of character build option? Well, those exciting new character build options are archetypes, and let's get into exactly what that means. All right, so here SSG does clarify several questions that players had. At least I had when I initially read that producer's letter before I saw this. So let's go on here. So archetypes, an archetype is, in short, a specific and unique type of way to play a specific existing class. This explanation gets a lot easier if we actually use an archetype we built to explain. So for this, we're going to use an upcoming archetype, Dark Apostate, as our example. So quick summary for those of y'all who didn't see the video yesterday. Archetypes are being introduced, which are basically subclasses, basically a class variant, however you want to describe it, but they're going to be a new way to play a class. So the big difference is going to be perhaps different feats. There's going to be different enhancement tree options. So it might have some of the original class's enhancement trees, but it might have a new one of its own, and it might not have access to some of the others. So like Dark Apostate, for example, that Linabel here is going to get into talking about, is a new cleric variant, so it's going to have access to the divine disciple tree, the new Dark Apostate tree, and War Priest, but it will not have access to the Radiant Servant tree. So there's a bunch of other combinations. So the 2 others they mentioned, Sacred Fist is the new punching paladin, like paladin monk archetype, so that's going to have access to the new Sacred Fist tree. And also it's going to have access to Radiant Servant tree from Cleric, and it's going to have access to Sacred Defender, but it's not going to have access to Vanguard or Knights of the Chalice. And I think the last one is the new Bard. I think it was Stormsinger was the name, and I think it has access to the new Stormsinger tree and Spellsinger and War Chanter, but does not have access to Swashbuckler. So anyways, let's continue here with what Linabel is saying. Dark Apostate is a cleric archetype. That means if you see an ability or something that requires you to be a cleric, Dark Apostate clarifies as you are a cleric first and a Dark Apostate second. It also means that in the party window, you'll see yourself as cleric, and in the who and looking for guild or looking for group window, you guessed it, you're a cleric. So the cleric icon is not going to change. You're still going to have the cleric icon, or for other archetypes, the same base class icon. What Dark Apostate has that other clerics do not is different enhancement trees. So as I already talked about this, but yeah, Dark Apostate has 3 trees: Dark Apostate, War Priest, and Divine Disciple, but not Radiant Servant. So a little bit of a different enhancement tree combination. Okay, and archetypes are not just one different enhancement tree, though. They have different class feats. For example, a Warlock archetype that has new pack choices or limits your pack choices to something thematically appropriate. So they haven't announced yet any Warlock archetypes, but this is a good hint right here that they will be coming. Different spell books they could have, for example, a bard that focuses more on illusion spells at the expense of sonic options. So there might be different spells available to archetypes, and there might be certain spells in the base class that are not available to archetypes. Replace more than one tree or all of them, so we've already talked about that, and even different alignment restrictions, so that's interesting. So for example, a paladin that would very much like you to not be lawful good, so that's very interesting. So you can multi-class into an archetype or a regular class just like you can with regular heroic classes, but you cannot multi-class an archetype with its base class or another archetype of the same class. So cleric archetype plus fighter is okay, cleric archetype plus fighter archetype is okay, but cleric archetype plus different cleric archetype equals not okay. So what that means is if you're, say, a Sacred Fist paladin, or you can multi-class with this new Dark Apostate cleric if you wanted to, but you cannot multi-class with base paladin, for example. So 2 archetypes could multiclass. So like I said, again, Sacred Fist Paladin could multiclass with Dark Apostate Cleric. However, you can't multiclass within your same base class. So Sacred Fist Paladin cannot multiclass or take levels of regular Paladin, and regular Cleric cannot multiclass with regular Cleric. The Cleric archetype cannot multiclass with base Cleric. All right. So let's move on here. So this is a big question I brought up in the video yesterday that I was wondering, and I'm sure a lot of players were wondering, and this is past lives. All the details about, past lives, or do you have to do these variants to keep heroic completionists, all that. So archetypes have their own past lives that fit in with the current heroic past life system. If your majority class is an archetype, you will earn that archetype's past life. An archetype's past life counts as a prereq for the heroic active past life feats. Furthermore, an archetype's past life feat will qualify someone for heroic completionist, assuming they haven't earned it already. So that basically tells you that no, you don't have to do all of the archetypes in order to get your heroic completionist back. Whether you do, say, like Sacred Fist Paladin or regular Paladin, that's going to fulfill the Paladin requirement for the heroic completionist, which, if you aren't aware, heroic completionist means you have 1 past life in every heroic class. So that's not something you have to worry about. However, there will be different feats available, different passives apparently, because they did say that they count as a prerequisite for the active. So apparently there's going to be different passives available for the archetypes. So there are extra past lives you can do if you want, but they aren't going to be required for heroic completionist. So that's good to know. So this also means there are more ways to get heroic completionists. So if you don't want to play, maybe you like monks, for example, and you have never done a paladin past life because you don't like playing a sword and shield paladin or something. Well, now you can have the option of getting that paladin past life in a different way because you can play Sacred Fist Paladin. So there's different ways to get the past life. So there's more options here. So that's good. If you have 1 copy of all heroic past lives done on a character except for Cleric, you'd be able to qualify for the Cleric portion with either base Cleric or Dark Apostate. All right. So yeah, we've already talked about that. This means that when we release new archetypes, heroic completionists won't be removed from players that already earned it, and new options will open up for players still on that journey. Finally, with this release, heroic completionists will become automatically granted to characters that qualify. That is a huge change that I'm sure all of you completionists are going to be really happy about. So the completionist feat, for those of you who aren't aware, is +2 to all stats and skills. And now, as of this next update, apparently, this feat is automatically obtained at level 3 for all characters that have completed, have fulfilled the requirements, essentially. So before you had to actually, for completionist, heroic completionists, you had to actually take the feat. Now you just get it automatically. So that's actually a huge buff to all these completionist characters who essentially now get an extra feat. So because before they were having to spend a feat on completionist. So yeah, that's freaking awesome for all you completionist players, and it's a bigger incentive now to actually go after heroic completionist if you have not obtained it already. All right, let's continue on. Why archetypes? There are a lot of great reasons to go that route, and we'd love to talk through some of them to help explain why we're angling in this direction. By the way, when I get to the end of this, I'll talk about some of the, I guess, common complaints I've seen so far. All right, so why archetypes? 1, making new classes is hard, both technically and design-wise. There are only so many D&D classes in the books, and ones that are left retread old ground considerably. We'd never be able to make class 16 without significant overlap with existing character options, something that feels bad from a design perspective and worse from a player perspective. Tons of great design spaces locked up, and we needed a way to go out and fill in the gaps. Okay, so yeah, so there are, like in pen and paper, there's a lot of different variants of these classes that they can explore. So yeah, that's very cool. I totally agree with him on that yeah, I mean, this is a great way to do that without introducing a full new class. And a lot of this is also just obvious reduction in work, right? They can make new options, new cool things to play without having to do all the work, like say they did with like Alchemist or something, where they had to make all these new spells from scratch. It's just a lot more cost efficient for them to do this in terms of just, man hours required. So yeah, good change for that reason. I think that's very cool. So yeah, I think good idea so far. Technically speaking, this is a lot better than making new classes for a lot of reasons due to how DDO's engine functions. There's a lot of work to get a new class up on the LFM panel, for example, and with archetypes, we don't have to do that. It prevents our UI from becoming bloated. Okay, blah, 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 blah. So basically, yeah, it's less work. We got it. so they can save time, they can offer more stuff faster. 3, this allows us to revisit design space that our existing classes touch upon and give it the love it deserves. If an exciting class sort of supports an archetype, this is a way for us to build that idea out and give it support in a way that doesn't mess with existing builds and archetypes. So that's one thing that I will say is a good idea, because there have been some popular archetypes that people have wanted to, well, I guess I shouldn't use archetypes, but there have been various types of builds, like Necro Cleric has been a thing. Like there are people who have rolled that, but now they're able to actually build a separate subclass for that build idea and actually support it more strongly. So yeah, very cool. I was actually just running with some Necro Cleric the other day. So yeah, very cool. I think these players will be really happy about that. It's just more support for these niche build types. Let's see. Archetypes give us a great way to schedule revamps and retooling of existing class features. We have historically had a hard time pinning revamps to a set schedule, but this gives us a great way to order and organize our class initiatives. For example, Dark Apostate releases alongside a revamp of Design Disciple. If we're building an archetype, that's a great time to shore up. So they're basically saying if they're already going to do the deep dive into revamping a class tree, then it's just time efficient to go ahead and also do these subclasses at the same time, because they're already digging into that tree and doing technical work on it. So that makes sense. 6, archetypes are an experiment to see if they resonate better with players than universal enhancement trees do. Universal enhancement trees are a struggle to design because they need to appeal universally across many builds, and these are the exact opposite. I don't really understand that, quite frankly. Why do they need to appeal universally across many builds? Do they really need to? I mean, I don't see anything wrong with having a class, a universal tree that's very niche in one specific area, but so I don't really understand what they're saying here. I guess that's something they want to do, is offer a lot of options, maybe so it's appealing, say if they offer one in an expansion, but I don't think they need to do that, but maybe from a business standpoint, they feel they need to make it appeal to a lot of players. But anyways, we want to build narrow, flavorful, high impact, and interesting options that players can choose from, compared to universal trees that everyone can access on top of an existing class split. This definitely isn't to say that we won't ever make more universal trees, but for right now, we're trying this new direction to see if it gets better. Yeah, the thing with universal trees is they've done so many of them now that I was hoping they would do. I really wasn't a big fan personally of them adding more and more and more, because it just feels like with every universal tree, the effect of the actual classes gets more and more watered down. So I think I personally will definitely like archetypes better than the universal enhancement trees, because it still makes the classes mean something, whereas like the more universal enhancement trees, the less classes matter, because there's more options outside of the actual class trees. And I think this also hints at we probably won't see, unless this is a big bust and players hate it, we may not see universal trees again. I mean, again, this is just speculation on my part. They've not said that here. So like Linabelle says here, this definitely isn't to say we won't ever make more universal enhancement trees, but this kind of language to me when I translate this means that, hey, we like archetypes better and we want them to work, and if they work, we're going to keep doing them. If they don't work, then maybe we'll do more universal enhancement trees, but we think this is going to be a better option. I mean, that's the way I interpret this. You all can interpret it how you want, but I don't think we'll see universal enhancement trees again unless archetypes are a flop. And also, I do think that based on some of the wording, like Cordovan did respond yesterday on the forum saying that the 3 they're releasing are going to be free, but are they going to be free in the future? I would say probably not, because they have sold universal enhancement trees. Obviously, that was a money-making thing for them. So if they're going to replace universal enhancement trees with archetypes, I would expect, and they have not said this, again, this is speculation on my part, but I would expect that archetypes going forward, not all of them, but I bet many of them will be paid in the future, especially since the 3 that are releasing now are for free-to-play classes. So Paladin, Bard, and Cleric. So those are all free classes. So if they release one for, say, Alchemist or something, will that one be free? I don't think so. That's speculation again, but I bet we'll see paid ones in the future. All right, so release schedule. We're planning on releasing the first 3 archetypes in the single batch this summer. So the 3 we've talked about already, I've already talked about already, the Cleric, Bard, and Paladin ones. So they said in a single batch this summer. So that means likely should be the next update 56. Let's see. We're trying to cover a variety of playstyles in the first batch, and we'll continue to spread outwards as the feature develops and players get used to the idea. It is worth noting that our goal here is not to make sure each class is an archetype to start. We will be instead aiming for archetypes we think will be fun to build and play with. It is possible, likely even, that a class will end up with 2 or even 3 archetypes before a different class gets its first. So this is just here to set the expectation to players that, hey, we're not going to like give every class one necessarily. We're going to make the archetypes we want to make as developers, and you shouldn't expect that that these archetypes are evenly distributed among classes. All right, so user experience. So the big question is, how do players actually choose an archetype? What's the UX like? I don't know what UX stands for. In short, when you select a class during character creation, a side window will appear that will contain the base class and its archetype. So you pick cleric, and then a side window appears, blah, 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 blah. So basically you just pick it, during character creation. When multi-classing into the archetype, you talk to that class's trainer, and you'll be asked if you would like to multi-class into the base class or archetypes. Okay, so you choose it's the trainer if you want to go into that archetypes. Obviously, like we mentioned before, if you're already like base cleric, for example, you can't multi-class into the I don't even know multi-class would be the right word for it, but you can't take the cleric archetype if you're already base cleric, and you can't take base cleric if you're already the cleric archetype dark apostate. So, but it will offer you the options, say if you wanted to go to a different class tree, like if you're dark apostate cleric, you want to go to take a level of Sacred Fist Paladin, you can still do that, obviously. But the option will be at the class trainers, as expected, not surprising. When selecting another player or viewing your own character sheet, archetypes will be displayed in the class breakdown. Okay, so cool. Nice, we would expect that. So let's continue on. You may swap into an archetype during lesser reincarnation, but not during the epic reincarnation releveling process. Again, not surprising at all. When you epic reincarnate, you can't change your class level, so that's not surprising. You won't need a plus X heart to swap levels during that LR. Swapping into an archetype during LR won't count towards a class swap totals and doesn't require class swaps to perform. So they're saying here that it doesn't require like an extra. So there's a long-standing thing with LRs that you can only have 3 classes involved in the process. So if you're like a paladin that also has fighter levels and monk levels, and you want to LR into like a cleric, you can't actually do that because you can only involve 3 levels in any of the processes. So if you want to do that, you would first have to get rid of one of those levels. So if you were a paladin fighter, I don't know, cleric, and you wanted to take monk levels or something, you would have to get rid of one of your classes. So you have to LR, get rid of the cleric level so that you only have 2 classes you've dipped into, so paladin and fighter, and then do another LR to take the monk levels or other 4th class level that you wanted. So that's often why in the store, if you buy like a plus 20, they include a plus 5 for free. That's why. It's just a system limitation that they've never really gone in and changed. But they're saying here that the archetypes will count. They won't count as an extra class. So they will count like dark apostate cleric is still going to count as cleric in that process. All right, so anyways, summary, it is our hope that players look at archetypes the same way that we do, as a feature that is absolutely full of potential, in a way for us to get funky fresh with our existing classes in a way that isn't intuitive or over complex. I don't know about that one. We want to bring the coolest and most unique stuff out of the books to the game so that players can experiment, refine, explore these new options. Okay, so they also have links to all this. So I'll put a link to this thread below in the description in case you want to check out these notes for yourself. But they have a different thread on each of the 3 archetypes being introduced. So let's talk about, I see 2 concerns. I think the one here I kind of hinted at here with overly complex. I think a couple problems I think we'll have, or a couple concerns I have, is the complexity. Like, new players are not going to understand any of this. I mean, I have to read, like, me as being a player who's played for 10 plus years, I have to read this stuff. I have to like actually spend some time to understand it. There's no way a new player is going to have any understanding of this system. So it's just another layer of complexity. It's just adding more and more to the learning curve that is DDO. But I mean, at this point, that is kind of the appeal to the players that have stayed for so long, is the deep learning curve. And the learning curve for DDO is already just absolutely through the roof, and all of us experienced players know that, like how hard it is to be a new player. So yes, it is adding more complexity, but I think that ship has sailed. This game, if you're going to be a new player and come to DDO, you're gonna have to learn. You're gonna have to spend some time reading and learning systems, watching videos, reading guides, things like that. So I don't really see that as any more really much of a concern, just because look, that ship has already sailed. All right. The other one is a lot of players, and I mentioned this yesterday, I brought up the fact that there are already a lot of class trees that players really want reworked. Like Archmage is one that's commonly brought up that really needs rework. There's other things like I know the Monk trees people bring up a lot, is like Monk, especially with Sacred Fist being offered here. Some players are like, hey, you need to address the Monk trees first. So will we see class tree revamps being put on the back burner in favor of this kind of work? I don't know. It's possible. There certainly are many already existing trees that need rework, and a lot of players were asking like, hey, why not just offer a new tree? Like, why do you need to go with this whole new class, this new archetype concept? And I think there's some answers to that. One I think is obvious, is that they certainly want to introduce more past lives. I mean, that's kind of the elephant in the room here. They obviously need to add more past lives for players to actually have more stuff to do. So I think that is one of the driving factors for doing archetypes, instead of just say like adding a Dark Apostate tree to the cleric trees. That's certainly not the only reason, but I'm certainly that is one of the reasons. Certainly Legendary Reincarnation that we all know is coming is far away. They're not going to probably put that into the game until we get to what, at least level 38. We're only at level 32 now. So that's one of the reasons that they definitely want to give players more things for players to do. It's been a while since they've added more past lives. Players really, there's a big segment of players who play DDO for Reincarnation. They need to give those players things to do, as much as other players who are trying to catch up really don't like that more past lives are being added. So I think that's one reason. But the other reason, and probably another huge reason, is that they want to offer more options that they probably can't do by, say, just offering new trees, like make a new Dark Apostate tree. So they can do different things, and there's definitely balance concerns that they can work around with these archetypes, because they can take trees away. So like Dark Apostate, for example, they've added this Dark Apostate tree, but they've taken away the Radiant Servant tree. So that provides some balance issue there, so they can offer maybe more DPS type options in that tree that don't have to be balanced out by the fact that this class also has access to this amazing healing tree. So like that's one example of I think that archetypes can give them more build options and give them more options to actually make these archetypes, to flesh them out in ways where they can avoid certain balance concerns like that. All right, so yeah, so I think that's one driving reason as well. It gives them a lot more build options as developers. So yeah, guys, that's gonna be it for the summary for this one. I don't know if I'll do more videos on the rest of the stuff here. Maybe, we'll see. The one I am the most interested in is Sacred Fist, which is really interesting because it's a monk paladin, but it also gets access to the Radiant Servant tree, which is you all know I like my clerics, so that's interesting to me. So maybe we'll do more videos. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, guys, that's gonna be it for this one. Hope you enjoyed. I'll see you all next time. Have a good one. Take care.